Alright, this is Danny, and I'm gonna give you a quick how to play Chinese chess. Chinese chess is not Chinese checkers, so please don't confuse those. This basically came up because I had some friends were talking about chess, and I told them I think Chinese chess is a lot more fun than like a European style chess, and I began to describe it to them, and one thing led to another, and I just felt like it's better just to make a video just to explain how to play. That way people will want to play rather than handing them, a chess set that has all these Chinese characters on it and a rule book that, I just think this might be better. Um, Before I go on, I just wanted to note that this one image is a pretty nice image that I got off of Wikipedia. So whoever put this online, thank you very much. I'm keeping it free just as it was meant to be. Okay, so right off the bat, you'll notice that there's a lot of Chinese characters on this board, and that alone can be kind of overwhelming. Also, the pieces are not sitting on squares. They're sitting on the lines, on intersections, which is also known as points. So one thing to keep in mind in this board is right away, it's the same, but it's different. So I'm just going to start from the very beginning. So here's the board. Now you'll notice right away that you've got a square here with an X in it. You've got a blank line, and you've got some crosses here. The crosses represent some starting positions for your pieces, which is pretty helpful actually. And then the others, I found a great image that kind of like describes it. My reference down here, by the way. The line across the center is the river, and the river is significant because some pieces are not allowed to cross the river, and some pieces actually change functionality once they cross the river. Also, by having the river, you'll notice that the board is not a square. It's actually one row taller than it is wide. So that's another thing that makes it different than a normal chessboard. Also, you'll notice that this square here is basically your castle or your palace. And you'll have a couple of pieces here that are not allowed to leave the palace. So that's neat. The king and his guards are in here, and it can get a little claustrophobic in there, which I think is kind of neat and adds a lot to the game. So I'm just going to go straight to the pieces. I found this great image that gives you like a one-to-one, a picture versus a Chinese character, which is pretty nice. Again, I feel like the Chinese characters can be pretty overwhelming for Western thinkers, or I'm sorry, Western people. But one thing to note, if you play online or if you like get a computer game that is Chinese chess, they will undoubtedly have an option to switch to something that looks more like this. So I wouldn't worry too much, but if you actually sit down and play the game in real life with somebody, odds are the chess set is going to look more like this. So I personally play with the Chinese characters just because if I don't want to get caught off guard at someone's house when they say, hey, let's play chess, and I can't really read their characters. So I figure it's good practice. Okay, so let's get into this. You'll notice right away you have a rook. The rook is actually known as a cart. This is a cart character. So, and it works just like a rook. It works you move in a plus sign. You can go as many spots as you want, and you capture on the plus sign. No big deal. The knight is kind of neat. The knight must move one space forward and then one space diagonal. And I say one space forward, I mean one space and a plus sign, and then one space diagonal. It's not an L. I know some people remember the chess pieces as being L's, but specifically this horse moves one and then say, for example, 1 and 1. This is important because you can actually put a piece in the way, unlike like Western chess where the knight kind of just jumps and hops over things. In this game, the knight is actually moving and moving. So if someone were to put a piece right here, my knight would not be able to move forward and would therefore be blocked, which I think is very cool. You can actually block the knight without killing it, which is neat. The next piece here is simplified by a bishop because it moves in an X a lot like a bishop, but keep in mind that the original character is actually an elephant. So basically this piece moves diagonally 2 spots at a time. So it would move here, and then it could move here, and then it could move here, and then back. What's interesting about this piece is that it is not allowed to cross the river. So it is like a strictly defensive piece. A couple things that are interesting to note about this piece, it's just like the knight. If somebody puts something in the way, or if you put your own piece in the way, you can actually block it so it can't go to its final destination. So these two pieces are, I think, very interesting because they can both be blocked without being killed. So that's a cool strategy to keep in mind. Another interesting thing about this elephant is that if you look, because of the way the number of rows and columns, there are only so many positions that this thing can make it to. And because of that, it gets to be a little claustrophobic with this piece. So keep that in mind. You need to use them wisely. One of the few places that can actually go to the center of the board is in the castle, which is already pretty crowded in here. So it's kind of neat. Like, I find this limitation an interesting feature rather. Next we have the guard. I've also heard this called the gentleman. The guards, of course, are protecting the king, and they are not allowed to leave the castle, and they only move in a X or a diagonally, and they may only move one space at a time. So I can move to here, and then I can move to here. I can move back before going up here. So keep that in mind. They only have 5 positions inside the castle. Now the king can only move in a plus sign. It's not like the king in Western chess. You can move one space at a time, only in a plus sign. So I can reach every space within this castle, but only one at a time. One really interesting thing about this king is that it is not allowed to see the enemy king. So basically you have to have pieces in between the kings. Later, when there are less pieces, you can use one king's vision across the board to kind of pin the other king over. Because basically one king stepping in the line of sight of another king is basically like suicide. So it's not allowed. So yeah, you can take one king and kind of pin the other king into the one column, and then maybe use one other piece to come in for the kill and get a checkmate. So that's kind of interesting. Also, if I haven't already said, the king can't leave the castle. And it looks like YouTube thinks the video is too long, so I'm going to break this into 2 videos.